Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever in the world you might be. I am Nicole BC, and you know everything. Ahoy, ahoy. So we're getting started. I think this is going to be the third episode, and you'll notice a trend from my bias, my personal interests, especially when it comes to these artists and these musicians, is to go historical, right? Like what makes somebody iconic? I guess in my mind, it's a lifelong body of work, true impact that probably takes decades to not just feel, but also research and review and feel, right? Like these influencers who posthumously are still shaping the way our society engages with art and with music and with industry. I'm also old. So I've started to get some listener requests in terms of artists who they think are changing the game, who are disrupting industry, who are showing us how things can be done in today's day and age. And I think that's fascinating. So these episodes are really going to actually start to evolve as we kind of move through in the Northern Hemisphere this summer, for y'all everywhere else winter. But yeah, I think I'm at about like nine different artists at the moment. We might get to about 12. We'll see. So yeah, I'm having a lot of fun researching these. That said, today's episode is not going to be fun. It is heavy. It is reflective of the times that we are in. Whenever you are listening to this, it is June of 2025. Say less, BZ. And I think what is so interesting about all of my podcast episodes, bias, absolutely, and full force, is it kind of doesn't matter like when I'm recording this, when the idea popped in, or when you're listening. It's all happening for a reason, right? Like that's in the Quantum Business Book Club. I talk a lot about how reading books to me feels like time travel because I'm suddenly able to engage with a creator, in this instance, a writer, who in their own context, in their own time space continuum, created a piece of work reflective of what their own conscious and subconscious were interpreting and going through. And I'm reading it in my own space and time, and we're intersecting, and I'm bringing my own interpretations and context and culture to their words. And it creates this third being, right? This completely different creative co-creation, this whole new concept and idea that was beyond their intention and their original purpose for creating. This artist in particular in today's episode profoundly shaped women, the United States, the recording industry, and the music business on so many different levels. What they did was life-threatening. You know, they put themselves so far out on a limb that they could very easily have been destroyed. And I have so much respect for that. As per all of these episodes, am not an expert. And in fact, you know, I've kind of grown up listening to this particular artist. So I didn't do some of the same research that I've done for the other artists who I felt like a little less familiar with, or like I needed a little bit more. I just like interviews and things like that. I've been listening to Nina Simone for as long as I can literally remember. I've been watching interviews. You know, there've been several different movies that have been created, both nonfiction and dramatic reenactments of her story. So this artist to me is ubiquitous. Like I don't know how I would feel about jazz, R&B, soul, the American Civil Rights Movement, where I'm at today in my own development as a creator, as a woman, as an American without Nina Simone. So it's like I get emotional. Wow. Even just thinking about creating on that level. One of the things I talk a lot about just in entrepreneurship in general is there is, you know, I kind of put people into three different categories. And without getting into that specifically, what I will say is there's a category of artist and creator that really does need to burn it all down in order to not just survive, but thrive. There's something to that willingness to do whatever it takes because there is no other option. You know, I talk about an artist as being someone who who can't let the idea go, right? Like there wasn't a different career path for them. This is the thing that has been their core focus since as long as they can remember. And, the ideas, whatever their creative output might be, wakes them up at night. And I mean, Nina Simone, I think embodies this perhaps more than any of the other artists that I'll be talking about throughout the series, at least as at like where I am right now and knowing who I've already researched and will be recording about. There was like a no holds barred, it doesn't matter what the cost or consequences are with Nina. And a lot of the other artists I've talked about, there was a volatility to her as a result. And, I often think about like what would have happened had this artist been alive today and making the music and profound impact in a much more quote unquote PC culture. And also what would have happened had that artist existed, 100 years prior. It's I don't know. Those are just where my brain goes. So I'll stop jibber jabbering. I believe we're entering sacred territory when we're talking about Nina. There's a couple other artists floating around that I'm debating on adding to this list that I, joke about as being like the patron saint or the high priestess. Nina perhaps would be the most shamanic of energies, like truly transformed this world. This episode, I hope, hits a little different, cuts a little deeper, because Nina didn't just make music. She demanded something out of all of us that I don't know we realized we were capable of. And quite frankly, I don't think a lot of us are even courageous enough to step up to. And there's something in that for entrepreneurship, right? She wasn't here to entertain us in a time when especially women on stage, especially women who performed, were seen as nothing more than folly, just playthings for us to watch and be entertained by. She awoken us to something, like I said, we didn't even know we were capable of seeing and experiencing. She used her own presence and what I will refer to as her business as resistance. And I saw a quote, or it might have been a title of an article that said, Nina sang it like a weapon. And I think that plays. Obviously, Nina Simone wasn't building a brand, right? She was a revolution with a piano, a voice, and a terrifying confrontational level of honesty. So this episode is going to reject palatability as a business strategy, look into monetizing truth by refusing to let your business be a place of placation, a site of silence, because your voice could dismantle empires. And like I said, I think this is incredibly useful in the time and place in which we are all being asked to build something completely new. And as you know, I like to think of that in terms of 21st century business building. So thanks, Nina. Thanks for inspiring us. Thanks for showing us how it was done. Some of the key entrepreneurial takeaways I think we're gonna dive into is using truth as your leverage, your differentiator, right? Your unique selling proposition. Visibility is not the same as impact. And if you know, I mean, wow, influencers, thanks. Your business is a platform. Use it to make the right people wrong. You see a lot of artists be criticized for using their microphone for political or social agendas. Nina would argue it is their duty as such, when you have a voice heard by the masses, to use your microphone. And integrity may cost you money in the short term, but it builds undeniable legacy for the long term. So when you think about your own business, and if you aren't aware, my definition of that is taking yourself, your ideas, your creations seriously. Monetizing optional. But what if your next creation, your next launch, your next idea, even your next post wasn't just about gaming the algorithm? What if it was unsettling the status quo? What if your content wasn't created to convert, but to confront? Nina Simone didn't make content. She didn't just write songs. She demanded calls to action. She made art that hit like a sermon and echoed like a riot. And so I want you to ask yourselves as you listen to the rest of this, what would it look like to build a business that refuses to play along? This is the Nina Simone episode. Nina used her platform to address racism, inequality, and violence on spiritual, emotional, societal, physical levels. She knew that telling the truth could cost her everything, but especially gigs, especially audience, especially support, and importantly, safety. Yet she did it anyway. She's quoted as saying, "You can't help it. An artist's duty is to reflect the times." She didn't just use her voice like some abstract metaphor. She weaponized it. She didn't make protest songs. She made audible indictments, and she knew what the consequences would be. In 1964, she stood on stage and sang the words, "Alabama's got me so upset. Tennessee made me lose my rest. And everybody knows about Mississippi. Goddamn." That song was written days after the Birmingham church bombing, and that killed 4 young Black girls and the murder of a civil rights leader, Medgar Evers. Nina didn't wait for permission. She didn't write something palatable. She named names. She lit that fire. As a consequence, the result being Southern radio stations banned Mississippi Goddamn. DJs sent the records back to her label, broken in half. She knew that would happen, and she did it anyway. In her autobiography, I Put a Spell on You, she wrote, "It was more than I could take, trying to perform Mississippi Goddamn to people who didn't want to hear it. And I did it anyway." This wasn't a brand risk. This was career sabotage by design. She wrote another song called For Women, and it was to break open the interior lives of Black women in America. She collaborated with Langston Hughes on Blacklash Blues to drag racism through the melody. She turned poetry, pain, and policy into her performance. She never once softened her message to make it more marketable. She refused to smile when the truth was burning through her teeth. And when asked why she did it, she said the most important thing any creator, any founder, any leader, or any cultural architect needs to hear: an artist's duty is to reflect the times in which we live. That is our duty. She was quoted as saying that in 1969 in the documentary, What Happened, Miss Simone? So I'd ask you, if your work reflects nothing but safety and strategy carefully coined by your chat GPT or language model, who is it really for? What might happen if you told the truth, especially if it might cost you everything? So first, entrepreneurial takeaway. If your business is sanitized, it's not sovereign. Stop softening your message to make it marketable. Let your audience rise to meet the clarity of your voice. Have you ever been afraid to say something? Ever been afraid to send it, to publish that post or that blog? Nina would challenge you to absolutely put that thing that you're afraid of out there. Nina didn't pander. She didn't perform joy for white audiences. She stayed in her rage, in her elegance, in her full authority. She said, "If I have to be civil to get paid, I'd rather starve." The principle stands, and Nina's principles were obvious across everything that she ever did. Profit without principle is a trap. Choose alignment over applause. Choose resonance over reach. Nina Simone never pandered. She didn't dilute. She didn't co-brand with comfort. She demanded resonance, and she paid the price. Nina was blacklisted in parts of the US. And it's so interesting, when I was doing this episode, I had never even thought about that term blacklist. We use it so often. It's a bit different when you realize where it probably came from, right? Nina's music challenged listeners, not because of its technical or melodic prowess, but because of its honesty. People thought it was too loud, it was too black, it was too disobedient. And she's well known again for her personality, but working with her, my understanding based on the research that I've done was different. She said no to record executives. She refused to tone it down. She said, "You don't get to ask me to be palatable. I'm not ice cream." She would turn down club gigs where she was told she couldn't perform Mississippi Goddamn. She walked off stage if the vibe was wrong. She didn't care about the check. She cared about the message. In today's world, this is the equivalent of walking away from like a major brand deal, an investor, a 7-figure licensing opportunity. The terms would cost you your mission, but how often do you hear about artists turning down enough financial support that they can do whatever they want, right? Nina would never sell out. She would sell through the resistance, through the silence, through the discomfort. And she made work that demanded to be heard, to be dealt with, whether you liked it or not. What parts of you or your business or your products are shaped by other people's approval? What have you sanitized so it would sell? Nina would tell you this: profit without principle is just another kind of poverty. Nina's songs weren't activist anthems. There was a lot of peaceful protest folk tunes happening at the time. Nina's songs were lived experiences. They were weapons. Mississippi Goddamn wasn't released or recorded for claps and approval. It was released for justice. What if everything you did in business wasn't just about helping your customer, but it transformed them in a way that forced them to wake up, to see who they truly are and who they could be? Nina teaches us, don't aim to be liked, aim to be unforgettable. Movements start when someone finally says what everybody else is afraid to. I don't know Nina. I don't imagine she wanted to be political. I don't think she waited for permission for anything. Activism wasn't a brand pillar. If you watch the Anti-Business School or listen to some of my older material, I talk about marketing as messaging, as having 4 pillars upon which to build a foundation, a platform. This isn't about, 21st century business building as a marketing pillar, right? Like, Nina was an activist because she was hardwired to change this world. She wasn't curated. She wasn't a content machine. Like, this was a compulsion. She said the quiet part loud and the powerful parts on beat. She made protest sound like prophecy. I have a playlist with a handful of her songs, but there's entire live sets of hers where you can really hear her talking to the audience. It's visceral, like it's electric. It's interesting to even be able to experience someone's recorded performance like that on stage. I can't imagine what it would be like to be in the same room, but she was wired different. In 1966, her performance of 4 Women the haunting, unflinching portrait of the Black woman I talked about a little bit earlier, each one shaped by racism, misogyny, and generational trauma. That the song got banned by multiple radio stations for being too controversial. But on stage, she talks about their pain. She tells their truth. She didn't write the song to entertain. She wrote it to intervene. It wasn't verses, it was a verdict. In 1969, at a concert in Harlem, Nina stood at the mic and told a crowd of thousands, "Are you ready to kill if necessary? Are you ready to burn buildings? Are you ready to make this country ungovernable?" That wasn't a PR move. That was a revolution in real time, captured on film and documented. Again, in that documentary, What Happened to Miss Simone. I even thought about recording those words, right? Because the algorithm is not going to love them. But like, the editing of Miss Simone is not even contemplatable. Nina wasn't trying to be radical. She was just speaking her truth. She was just being honest. And her honesty happened to be explosive. So, entrepreneurial takeaway number 3, what if your own products, marketing, brand wasn't about appealing to your target market, but it was about an explosive, defiant, educational, transformational message? If you stop trying to make everyone happy or approving, stop trying to seek everyone's approval. And you started to design your business, your brand, your products, your offerings to make people uncomfortable, what might happen? Movements don't start with mass consensus. They start with one person saying what nobody else will. So here's your Nina Simone litmus test. Are you saying the safe thing or the true thing? Nina didn't care if she made the top of the charts. She cared if she made history. And not from a populist standpoint, but from a transformational place of, can we change the course of what is happening now? In Nina's instance, the rage became strategic, and not in the sense that she used anger as a strategy, but she fueled her anger into art. That was an alchemical process, a transformational process. She didn't suppress anything to quote unquote be professional. She made rage poetic. And in that strategy came the profits, and not, again, just monetary. She would have measured her metric of success, her profitability, by change. And did she affect the lives of the people she sang about? Rage is a compass. It points you towards what needs to change. From there, you can transform that energy into impactful, compassionate, creative, intuitive leadership. That's where your offer, your launch, your product, your platform, your voice answers that call. Make the personal public. Nina sang about domestic violence, addiction, liberation, not because it sold, but because it mattered. Let your brand show what hurts, not just what converts. This isn't about agitating the pain, which is like a very common phrase in sales. This is about vulnerability as your superpower, because it is what resonates. And again, that is the opportunity for change. And be willing to dismantle what's been built, but especially what you've built. Nina wasn't trying to make art. She was unraveling existing narratives. She was challenging the status quo. She was saying, just because this is how things have been does not mean this is how things need to be or should be or will continue to be. And she took it upon herself to be that agent of change. Apply this dismantling to your marketing, to your pricing model, to your leadership, to everything you've ever done, to who you are and how you show up and the voice that you have adopted. Every choice you make from here on out is either upholding the system or dismantling it, rewriting your own story and narrative. So Nina would say, build your business like a subversive, from joy, from vision, and use a sledgehammer. Okay, so how do you do this, right? What would Nina do? Nina would build a platform, not just a product. She didn't just make music. She made moments that moved history. She turned concerts into classrooms, albums into uprisings. And in today's terms, we would call that thought leadership. God, it sounds so fucking watered down when you put it like that, right? She would challenge anyone in her experience to ask, are you launching something just to sell it? Or are you here to shift something? Whether you're building a restaurant, technology, art, infrastructure, or an ecosystem, make it mean something. Make it move people. Use your voice. Secondly, fire the wrong audience loudly if needed. And this is, I'm noticing this is a theme in some of these artists that I've been researching. They were so willing to just walk away from everything that had supported them and believed in them up until that moment. Nina walked off stages if the room didn't deserve her message. So it wasn't about if she didn't feel it or if the vibe was off or if they didn't feel supported. It was a deserving that she demanded. She didn't adjust herself or her performance or her music or her art or her expectations to be comfortable. She demanded alignment and resonance in everything she did in the moment. That looks like letting go of partnerships, investors, clients, distribution channels, products, ideas, strategies, everything, if it doesn't align with your values. Sometimes when I'm doing this research, I'm like, wow, I feel very validated right now. I have like 100 episodes on value alignment. So I'm in good company. Nina would tell you, protect your integrity like it is your IP. Because it is. That is what makes you you. Be you. Be surrounded by an ecosystem that is willing to support who you are in this moment right now and leave in any other instance. At least I think that's what Nina would say. Do not water it down. Say the damn thing. Nina didn't soften the edges. She sharpened them into instruments. Nina would remind you every time you dilute your truth to be more marketable, you abandon the very edge that makes your work unforgettable. Whether you're coding or curating, directing, designing, or publishing, leading, managing, making, make it say something. No more vague branding, no more hollow deliverables, no more neutral pastels. Say the damn thing. Master the craft so your message can't be ignored. I really, really loved this final point. Nina trained at Juilliard. Her rage had range. Her grief had technique. Her protest was underpinned by precision. It takes so much practice and so much experience to make it feel that spontaneous. When you stop thinking about your craft, you've probably reached that level of mastery where you can step into a space of true channeling of energy. That's the move. Your vision should be backed by mastery. Let your ideas be disruptive and undeniable. Your excellence is their amplifier. I'm just thinking about the songs that I put on this playlist and how they were chosen. And it was, for the most part, I wanted to show this exact thing. I'm sure you've heard protest songs. I'm sure you've seen artists on stage, and there's a level of performance that might feel a little disingenuous. Like I said, there's something different about Nina. It like makes every hair on my body stand on end when I watch her, especially her live performances. So I tried to pull songs that demonstrated her true prowess as a musician, a singer, a performer, a writer, a creator, and also her voice, what she was able to effect in terms of change and impact in her own songwriting. And a lot of, she performed a lot of other people's songs written by other people, but in a way that completely transformed that creator's purpose and intent. So please add to that playlist if you feel called to. I think all of the playlists I'm going to share have that option. They're all just on Spotify. There's some YouTube playlists as well. But yeah, I'm absolutely open to any songs you might suggest. And if you're still with me, I'm still researching artists. So the next 3 or 4, I think are going to be all listener submitted, listener suggested. Anywho, I would love to hear from you and love to know what artists you think like changed the game, and to try and figure out how that layers over how to build business in 21st century creative leadership. Nina Simone was not just disruptive, she was dangerous to the systems that tried to market her as palatable. The music industry couldn't contain her, and many of her most radical songs were either buried, unreleased, or only performed live because no label wanted the backlash. That's actually, I'm glad I wrote that note down. So many of the songs that I could only find live, and I didn't know that until doing the research, that they just refused to record them. I mean, that's unreal, right? Like, she performed them anyway, knowing they had been refused for recording. This wasn't just music. It's spell work. It's strategy. It's sacred protest. You are not here to make people comfortable. You are here to make them remember. Nina Simone didn't need a marketing funnel. She didn't even need the fucking internet. She had a mission, and she did not stop. She did not relent. She marched her mission to the very end. Whatever you are building, make it sharp, make it holy, make it undeniable. Business isn't just about offers and sales and customers. It's about your voice. It's about what you refuse to say silent. It's about what you refuse to stay silent about. You know that I think the whole reason to be here, to create, to build, to offer, to support, is so that you can be the king, queen, ruler of your own castle. You can make up your own rules in your own domain. You can do it your way because you deserve it. But more importantly, because the way that you solve a problem is completely different than anybody else. And we need that. We need you. We need your ideas. So thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. I would love to know what you think of this playlist and Nina's music. And also I would love to know any other artists you want to do the dirty on, get down with. And just, I mean, there aren't words for my own love and appreciation for Nina Simone. And so I won't say anything more. Thank you so much. I'll catch you on the flip side. Love you. Bye.